Hey guys, Mr. Antonucci here, and in this video I want to share with you my top 10 tips for success in AP Calculus this year. Now, if you Google tips for AP Calculus, a lot of the videos and blog posts you're going to read are about tips preparing you for the actual AP exam, like more towards the end of the year. I wanted to make a video that was helpful to you going into the course at the beginning to know what to look out for and some tips for what to be doing along the whole school year to help you have as much success as possible. So first one is make note cards. All right, there is no formula sheet given to you on the AP Calculus exam. None. So as you go through the year and you learn different rules, different theorems, different formulas, you're going to want to make a note card, like flashcards for yourself, for each of those, so that you can know how the formula works, so that you can know the conditions and the conclusions for the different theorems that come up throughout the year. And then if you just make them as they come up in the class and then set aside time each week to review them, you'll do very well. And then when it comes time to study for the actual AP exam, you won't have to dedicate a whole lot of time memorizing these formulas that you're going to need, because you'll already know them and you can focus on doing practice problems and practice exams and tightening up your ability to answer open-ended questions. Second thing is know when and how to use your calculator. So there are 4 things that you're allowed to do on a calculator where you don't really have to show work when a calculator is allowed to be used. So on the AP Calc exam, there's a portion where you're allowed to use a calculator, and there's a portion where there is no calculator permitted. Okay, so one of the things you're allowed to do is graph a function in arbitrary viewing window. What that means is that you can just go to your y equals menu, type in a function, graph it, change the window settings to whatever you want, and copy it down. You don't really have to show any work for that, unless well, that would probably be on a non-calculator portion where they're asking you to do some curve sketching using some calculus. So, but where you just have to produce a graph, you're allowed to use a calculator. Second thing, you're allowed to solve an equation using your calculator. And the easiest way to do this is you graph, if you're trying to find where 2 equations intersect, you just graph each equation separately and solve for the intersection point. The way to solve an equation is you set the equation equal to 0, graph it, and find where the zeros of the function are. Again, you could do that on your calculator, but a little caveat to that is you are supposed to write down the equation that you're solving and the solutions that you get in order to get full credit for those solutions. You have to show the equation that you're solving. You don't have to show all the algebraic steps of solving that equation if you did it on your calculator. Use the calculator for that. But you do have to write the equation down that you're solving, and then you do have to write the solutions down and indicate those. Third thing you're allowed to do is calculate a derivative numerically. Now, you may not know what that is if you're watching this at the beginning of the year, but just, file that under information that's going to be important when it comes up. And then the other thing is calculate an integral numerically. Those are the 4 things that you're allowed to do on the calculator. Third thing is use correct mathematical notation. Up until this point in your math career, if you've never come across calculus, you've been dealing with functions, f of x, g of x, h of x. And your previous math teachers may or may not have stressed the importance of using correct mathematical notation. It is of the utmost importance in calculus because we begin talking about different layers of a function. And if you think physics, think a position, velocity, acceleration. In calculus, we have a function, we have its derivative, we have its second derivative, we have its antiderivative, and there's notations for all of those. And it gets very ambiguous what you're talking about without using correct mathematical notation. So very, very important to use correct mathematical notation when showing your work and when stating your answers. Number 4 is know which function is being referenced. This is closely related to number 3 because in AP Calculus, there are multiple layers to a function when you're studying it and doing analysis. So what often will happen is they'll give you a table of values, or you'll be given a graph that is dealing with one layer of a function, and then questions about a different layer of a function that you can kind of deduce information about given the graph or the table. And I've seen year after year students make this mistake a lot, is they don't pay attention to which layer is being referenced in the graph or table versus the information they're trying to deduce from that in a different layer. And they answer the question wrong when they actually did know how to do the problem. Number 5 is know how to avoid rounding errors. So it's very important that your final answer in an AP Calculus, your final answer needs to be accurate to 3 decimal places. And so what often will happen is you will have multiple steps to get to that final answer. If you round the first step's answer to 3 decimal places, and then use that in the next step and round that to 3 decimal places, and then use that in the next step and round that to the 3 decimal places, you've done 3 levels of rounding, and your final answer may be incorrect. So for example, if the correct answer is 3.125 and you have 3.124 because of rounding errors, or 3.126, it's going to get marked wrong because it's not accurate to 3 decimal places. So what you need to do to avoid rounding errors is not round anything until you get to your final answer, and only use exact answers, or if you can't get the exact form, go out as many decimal places as possible for all of those intermediate answers. Number 6, closely related to it, is know how to round appropriately. I hinted at this in number 5, that in AP Calculus, your answers, unless otherwise indicated, unless they say round to the nearest integer or round to the nearest person or fish, the default is that you have to round to 3 decimal places. And here's how you do it. You know how pi is 3.14159. Okay, if you go out 3 decimal places, you can round or truncate at the 3rd decimal place. So 3.141 would be an acceptable answer, or 3.142 would be an acceptable answer because the 5 would round the 1 up to a 2. And in fact, as long as you have the first 3 decimal places either rounded appropriately or truncated appropriately, what's after that doesn't matter. So for example, if the answer were the decimal of pi, 3.141, and then you had 3.141999999, it would get credit because your answer is accurate to 3 decimal places. But if you put 3.143 and the answer was 3.141, or truncated or rounded to 3.142, 3.143 would be marked incorrect because it's not accurate to 3 decimal places. So rule of thumb, round your answers to exactly 3 decimal places. Truncating is also allowed, but that gives you 2 options, which just, has more you have more information running around in your mind. So just by rule of thumb, round to 3 decimal places unless otherwise indicated. Okay. Number 7, use radians, not degrees. This is very important, especially for those of you that may be taking statistics or just got done with pre-calculus. In AP Calculus, the default angle measure is using radians, not degrees. So make sure your calculator's mode is in radians, not degrees. If you are also taking physics the same time you're taking AP Calculus, and your physics teacher wants degrees and not radians, please make sure that you change the mode when you change classes. It's happened a lot of times to me where students, all their work was correct, but their numbers kept being wrong. And what happened was they were using degrees instead of radians because they forgot to check the mode. If that happens on the AP Calc exam, you're not going to have time. There's no possible way for you to communicate that. So just be aware that you're going to be using radians, not degrees. Now, closely related, because it's of a trig nature, is memorizing the unit circle and special angle values for trig functions. So you're going to be dealing with sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, cotangent.
and their special angle values like pi over 3, pi over 4, pi over 6, pi over 2. So what I would encourage you to do is memorize the first quadrant special values for trig functions as reference angles, and also the coordinate points like pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Okay, I did make a separate video on how to memorize the unit circle, so you could check that out as well. But this is a good thing that you want to make flashcards for as well, because on the no calculator allowed portion of the exam, this is an eligible question that part of the question you might have to know what sine of pi over 4 is. Okay. Number 9, get help when you don't understand. Can't stress this one enough either, because I've seen it happen time and time again with students where they don't understand a concept. It's not a big idea at the time, or not big deal at the time, but they don't get it cleared up. They don't get clarification on it. They don't get understanding on it. And then it just snowballs from there. And then, a couple weeks later at the end of the marking period, they're really, really struggling because they didn't get help when they didn't understand. Reach out and get help. All right, number 10, it kind of follows from that, is be a good student. Here's just a couple practical tips. Make sure you attend each class and pay attention. Pay attention and take detailed notes. The reason that you're given these instructions is so not only can you learn it, but then you can then refer back to it. Ask clarifying questions during class. If you're not sure what something means or something doesn't understand, you have to advocate for yourself. Also, following from taking detailed notes is now you have the opportunity to use those notes to study by reworking lesson examples on your own to see if you can get the process and procedure and understanding down when you already know what the answer should be from the notes in class. So I would do this in college, and I would take detailed notes, and then I would sit at my desk at home and I would get out a blank sheet of paper, write the problem down, rework it on my own, and try to understand the process and how to get the right answer. And then I could check it because I had the right answer in the process and steps because it was part of my notes from class. And then do the same thing with assignment problems, particularly ones that were tricky to you and ones that you got wrong, particularly because you didn't understand the concept, not because you just made like a careless mistake or you forgot the negative sign somewhere or multiplied when you should have added. Like, look back at those problems that were difficult and challenging for you and you really didn't know how to do them. Go back over those. And a good thing to do is to attend office hours regularly. Attend office hours regularly and go over those problems so that you know the process and the procedure and the steps and how to get the right answer. And then you could rework those as you study. All right, guys, those are my top 10 tips for AP Calculus success. I hope those were helpful to you and that you benefit from those and that those do set you up for success, because now your awareness level to these things that you need for success has been raised. And hope you have a great year. All right, Mr. Antonucci signing off. Take care.